Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I want to share something a little different, something that's been on my mind for a while now. I spent 40 years of my life chasing something that turned out not to exist. My name is Margaret Lawson. I'm 79 years old, and I only realized what I'd been doing wrong when it was almost too late to do anything about it. When I was 25, I had a very clear picture of what success looked like. I was fresh out of business school, one of only 3 women in my graduating class, and I was determined to prove that I belonged. Success meant climbing the corporate ladder, making more money than my parents ever dreamed of, having a corner office with my name on the door. Success meant respect, recognition, and the satisfaction of knowing I'd made it in a world that didn't particularly want women like me to succeed. I got a job at an advertising firm in Chicago. It was 1971, and the men I worked with made it clear they didn't think I'd last. They gave me the accounts nobody else wanted, the small clients with smaller budgets, and they waited for me to fail. So I worked harder than everyone else. I stayed later, came in earlier, took work home on weekends. I landed clients they said I couldn't land. I won awards they said I'd never win. And slowly, grudgingly, they started to take me seriously. By the time I was 35, I was a vice president. By 40, I was running my own division. I had the corner office, the salary, the respect I'd been chasing. People asked me to speak at conferences. Young women wrote to me asking for advice on how to break into the industry. I was profiled in business magazines as a pioneer, someone who'd shattered the glass ceiling and made it to the top. From the outside, it looked like I'd achieved everything I set out to achieve. But here's what nobody saw. I was exhausted. Not just physically tired, though I was that too, but exhausted in a deeper way. I felt like I was constantly performing, constantly proving myself, constantly one mistake away from losing everything I'd built. Every success just raised the bar for the next one. Every achievement just created a new expectation to meet. I kept thinking that if I could just get to the next level, the next promotion, the next milestone, then I'd finally feel like I'd made it. Then I could relax. Then I could be satisfied. That feeling never came. I got married when I was 31 to a man named Richard who worked in finance. We met at a networking event, which should probably have told me something about what our relationship would become. Richard understood my ambition because he had the same drive. We were both climbers, both competing against the world, and maybe a little bit against each other. We had a nice apartment, nice cars, nice vacations to places where we mostly talked about work. We looked good together at company events. We fit into each other's professional lives seamlessly. We didn't have children. It wasn't that we didn't want them exactly, but the timing was never right. I was always in the middle of a big campaign, or up for a promotion, or taking on a new challenge that required my full attention. Richard was the same way. We kept saying we'd think about it next year, and then next year would come, and there would be another reason to wait. Eventually, we stopped talking about it altogether, and I told myself I was fine with that decision. I told myself that my career was my legacy, that the work I was doing mattered, and not everyone needs to have children to have a meaningful life. I believed that for a long time. Or at least, I told myself I believed it. The years blurred together in a way I didn't notice until much later. My 40s became my 50s became my 60s, and I just kept working. I moved to a bigger agency, then to another one, and started my own consulting firm. I was always busy, always in demand, always chasing the next project that would prove I still had it, that I was still relevant, and I still mattered. Richard and I divorced when I was 57. It was amicable, which is a polite way of saying we'd been living separate lives for years, and finally admitted it. We divided our assets, shook hands, and went back to work. I retired at 68 because my doctor told me I had to. I'd had a health scare, nothing life-threatening, but serious enough to make me slow down. My business partner bought me out. We had a retirement party at a nice restaurant. People gave speeches about my contributions to the industry, and then it was over. Just like that, 43 years of working, of climbing, of chasing, and suddenly I was done. That's when everything fell apart. When you work as much as I did, your job becomes your identity. It's not just what you do, it's who you are. People knew me as Margaret Lawson, the advertising executive, the woman who'd made it in a man's world. Without that, I didn't know who I was supposed to be. I tried to stay busy at first. I traveled, took up hobbies, volunteered for causes I thought I cared about, but nothing felt right. Nothing felt like it mattered the way my work had mattered. I was lonely, though it took me a long time to admit that. I had colleagues and professional contacts and people who respected me, but I didn't have friends, not really. I didn't have people I could call just to talk, people who knew me as something other than my job title. Richard had remarried. My parents were both gone. I had a brother I barely spoke to because we'd grown apart decades ago while I was too busy to maintain the relationship. I'd spent my entire adult life building a career, and I'd neglected to build a life. The worst part was the realization that all those years of chasing, all that sacrifice and hard work and determination to reach the top, had been in pursuit of something that didn't actually exist. I'd been chasing this idea of arrival, this moment when I would finally feel successful enough, accomplished enough, respected enough, when I could finally stop proving myself and just exist, when I could finally feel satisfied. But that moment never came. Even at the peak of my career, even when I had everything I thought I wanted, I just felt empty. The satisfaction was always temporary, always conditional on the next achievement. The respect was always fragile, always requiring me to maintain a certain image and performance level. The recognition felt hollow because it was for what I'd done, not for who I was. I'd built my entire life around reaching a destination that turned out to be a mirage. And by the time I realized it, I was 70 years old and didn't know how to build something different. I spent about a year in that dark place, feeling sorry for myself and angry at the world, and wondering what the point of any of it had been. But eventually, slowly, something started to shift. I started thinking about the things I'd given up or postponed or simply ignored while I was chasing success, relationships, hobbies, simple pleasures, the kind of ordinary life I'd always thought was beneath me, or at least not as important as my career. I started small. I joined a book club at the library, something I never would have made time for before. I started cooking actual meals instead of eating takeout at my desk or grabbing something quick between meetings. I reached out to my brother, and we had a long, awkward conversation that eventually became regular phone calls. I volunteered at a literacy program, teaching adults to read, which had nothing to do with advertising or business success, and everything to do with just helping someone learn something they wanted to learn. And slowly, very slowly, I started to understand what I'd been missing: connection, purpose that wasn't tied to achievement. The satisfaction of doing something simply because it felt meaningful, not because it would advance my career or impress anyone. The pleasure of having time, real time, to pay attention to the world around me instead of always rushing to the next thing. I also started to see how many opportunities I'd missed while I was focused on climbing. I thought about the relationships I could have had if I'd made them a priority, the experiences I could have had if I'd been willing to take time away from work, the version of myself I might have known if I'd ever stopped long enough to ask who I was beyond my job title. I'd been so busy building an impressive life that I'd forgotten to live an actual life. I'm 79 now. I've been retired for 11 years, and it's taken me most of that time to make peace with what I gave up and to figure out how to build something real with the time I have left. I'm not going to tell you I've figured it all out or that I'm completely at peace with my choices. Some regrets don't go away. Some losses can't be recovered. But I have learned something important, something I wish someone had told me when I was 25 and just starting out. Success The way our culture defines it, the way I was taught to define it, is mostly an illusion. It's a moving target that keeps you running your whole life without ever letting you stop and feel satisfied. The corner office, the salary, the recognition, the awards, they're all just carrots on sticks, and chasing them will consume your entire life if you let it. Real success, the kind that actually matters when you're at the end and looking back, isn't about what you achieved or how high you climbed or how much money you made. It's about the relationships you built and maintained. It's about the experiences you had and the attention you paid to the small moments that make up a life. It's about knowing yourself, not just the professional version of yourself, but the actual person underneath. It's about being present in your own life instead of always preparing for some future moment of arrival. I spent 40 years chasing something that didn't exist, and I missed so much while I was running. I missed the chance to have children, though I didn't admit to myself that I wanted them until it was too late. I missed building deep friendships because I was always too busy for anything that wasn't work-related. I missed knowing my parents in their final years because I was always flying somewhere for a meeting or working on a deadline. I missed experiencing my own life because I was so focused on building a resume. If you're younger than me, if you're still in the middle of your career, still climbing, still chasing whatever version of success you think you're supposed to want, I need you to stop for a moment and ask yourself something. What are you sacrificing to get there? And when you finally arrive, if you arrive, will it actually give you what you think it will? I'm not saying don't work hard or don't have ambition or don't take pride in what you do. Those things matter. But they're not the only things that matter, and they're definitely not the most important things. The most important things are the ones I neglected. The people, the moments, the simple act of being present in your own life. You can't get time back. That's the hard truth nobody wants to hear, but it's true. The years I spent working 80-hour weeks, missing holidays, postponing life until I reached some mythical point of success, those years are gone. I can't go back and make different choices. I can't recover the relationships I let atrophy or the experiences I was too busy to have. All I can do is tell you what I learned and hope that maybe you'll make different choices than I did. Success isn't a destination you reach. It's not a finish line you cross where everything suddenly feels complete. It's not a corner office or a title or a number in your bank account. Real success is living a life you don't want to escape from. It's building relationships that sustain you. It's knowing yourself and being known. It's paying attention to the moments that make up your days instead of always looking ahead to something else. I spent 40 years chasing something that didn't exist, and I'm spending whatever years I have left learning to live differently. It's not easy to unlearn the lessons that were drilled into me about what matters and what success looks like. But it's necessary, because at the end, when you're looking back at your life, nobody asks about your job title or your salary or how many awards you won. What matters is whether you loved people and let yourself be loved, whether you paid attention, whether you were present, whether you actually lived. Don't make my mistake. Don't wake up at 79 and realize you spent your whole life running towards something that was never real in the first place. Stop now. Look around. Pay attention to what you have and who you have and what actually makes you feel alive, because that's all there is. And it's more than enough if you let it be.